Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol, and welcome to the Abarth 595 Scorpioneoro. We might have to debate exactly how you say that name, but it's basically a little Abarth 595 limited edition that looks ace. In the past on the channel, I have driven my fair share of little Abarths. They're both 595s and 695s. I think the first one I drove was the Rivale, which was so cool. And I had such a fun week with that car. I flew out to Italy for the launch of the 595 70th Anniversario with my good mate Steph ABTV. And I love these little things. They are brilliant B-road blasters. They put such a smile on your face. But one of the things I've never really done with one of these before is do lots and lots of miles. I've only ever had them for short periods of time or done short journeys. So this week I've been living with this car for a little bit longer, and I am literally a mile into a 215 mile journey. I'm in Wales at the moment and I'm on my way home after a fairly long week away from home. So I've got 215 miles, some 4.5 hours to explore this car, share with you what it's like to do a long distance in one of these cars, but also talk to you about this limited edition 595 because it's pretty cool. So first thing, let me talk you through this little Scorpioneoro. And I always find it funny whenever I do a car from Abarth, you always end up speaking like an Italian. And my mate Steph says Scorpioneoro much better than I do. So please put it in the comments phonetically how I should say the name of this car. But this is a limited run 595. They're just 2,000 units. There's a lovely little plaque down here saying that it's one of 2,000. It's essentially a 595. It's got a 1.4 turbocharged engine, and that produces 165 horsepower through the front wheels. Now, these little 595s and 695s only have a 5-speed box. That's maybe my first grumble. It's a lovely change because of where the actual gearbox and the length of the gear stick is. However, because I'm so used to driving cars with 6 gears, or nowadays even more, it does just sometimes take a little bit of getting used to. Now, I believe that the reason it's not got a 6-speed box is because there wasn't room for the 6 gears and so on, but that's one little grumble. In terms of outside spec, this car's spec for me is just, it's so reminiscent of the John Player Special Lotus livery, the Formula One livery, one of my favourite and maybe the most iconic Formula One livery out there, with the black body colour and then the gold accents. There's a lovely little gold pipeline all the way around the middle of the car. The gold accented wheels just stand out so much, gold Abarth writing down the side. It just looks wicked from the outside, and I would be if I had one of these, be sorely tempted to go full out JPS livery on it because I just think it looks fantastic. Exhaust wise, now these can have either an Akrapovic or the Record Monza exhaust. This has got the standard Abarth exhaust, and it's okay. It doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't sound nearly as nice as the Monza. So I'm pretty sure that's been done because of the price point of this car, because the car we're sat in it's just over 22,000 quid. I think that's really good money for the spec. So outside wise, I think this car looks absolutely ace. Let's see what this is like on a little bit of twisty national speed limit Welsh road. They are super darty little things, this 165 horsepower. It's got a small car, very short wheelbase. It doesn't have nearly as much torque steer as something like a really high performance Mini, certainly not my Mini. When you go into sport mode, it does deaden the steering up a little bit, and you lose a little bit of that direct pointiness, sadly. But they are really good fun. Sadly, I need to find another piece of road with less cars on it. Here we go. Bit of space. Revs really nicely up to about 6,000 RPM. And it is a really nippy little car and has fantastic manners in the corners. Much more than you'd expect such a short wheelbase car, to be honest. And it is, I'm a Mini guy, right? And it's very Mini-esque in its smile delivery. It really does put a grin on your face. And you end up trucking down a little B road like this, and it's just great fun. You're never doing ridiculous miles an hour. Don't get me wrong, it's not a slouchy car. The brakes are pretty good. You've got drilled discs front and rear, but it is a brilliant little car for a B road. There is no doubt about it. It's got, maybe needs a little bit more punch out of the corners, just a little bit more zing. It's found wanting once you start stretching its legs a little bit, but this lovely sort of right and then left, and I'm bombing along here and I'm not breaking the law. I'm doing less than 60 miles an hour and I'm still have a great smile on my face. And that for me, you know, I get to drive lots of supercars and cars with 3, 4, 5, 600 horsepower, and honestly I think you'd have more fun in this going down a B road like this than you would do in pretty much any supercar. It's brilliant, brilliant fun. Inside's pretty cool, to be honest. Everything's done through this little 7-inch touch screen. It is quite small, but it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Sadly, you do need to use a wire. One of the big grumbles I do have is, although there are 2 places to put drinks just in front of the gear, or in front of the handbrake, and 2 at the back, there's nowhere to put your phone. There's a little place to kind of stand it upright, but it doesn't stay in there. So at the moment, I've actually got my phone on a wire so that I can use Apple CarPlay, and then I've wedged it in between the bottom part and the back part of the seat so it doesn't move around. And that's just really annoying. I can't understand why they couldn't have engineered somewhere in here to put your phone. Everything else, the little display in the front instrument binnacle, I quite like that. I just put this car in sport the second I get in it. It firms the steering up, and it gives you a kind of a much more preferable display up front. My biggest challenge with this car is driving position. For somebody of my height, it is far from ideal. My problem I've got is, in order to get enough leg room, so I put the seat back to get my leg room, I've got to really stretch to the steering wheel because there's no reach adjustment on the steering wheel. And what that means is you end up driving with your hands at the bottom of the steering wheel quite a lot, because if I've got them at sort of the 10 to 2 position where I would normally want them, you've got a lot of stretch in your arms and it's just not comfortable. And I fear on this journey, as we get a little bit further into it, because we're still at the beginning of the journey, it's going to start to prove problematic in terms of comfort for me. So I just don't think it's a great driving position, but I guess they're working with, you know, a relatively restricted space. In terms of seats in the back, there are seats in the back. I haven't sat in them. I don't think there's a great deal of space. But what is surprising is how much space there is in the boot. I've actually got quite a lot of stuff in there. I've got my main camera bag with all my cameras and stuff. I've got an overnight bag. I've got my laptop bag and other stuff. There's plenty of room in there, actually. It's quite surprising because you kind of look at this car and you think, where's everything going to go? Well, actually, the boot's not bad. So I'm going to crack on a little bit. Next time I'll talk to you, I reckon we'll find a little bit of dual carriageway and we'll talk about what this thing's like at cruising. Driving this car round roundabouts like it's a go-kart. Now then, sit rep, I am about 2 hours into my journey. And so far, actually so good. I don't have so much of a numb bum. When I drove this car up at the beginning of the week, I had the seat in a slightly different position. There's like a lever down here and you can move the bottom seat position. And I don't know what I've done. I've just moved it and it's just a little bit more comfortable. Now, just a quick one in terms of this review. You're probably thinking, this isn't your normal style of review, Pete. Well, kind of just from a timings point of view, I didn't really have the opportunity to do my normal walk round the car at home thing. So I thought it might be a bit of fun to review the car during a journey and just using a little bit of kind of footage dropped over when we're talking about specific things. Because, you know, sometimes I don't have the time to... It's got such a little character, this car. But yeah, number not too bad at the moment. It's not perfectly comfortable. These seats, they do look really cool. They're just not, for me and my body shape, just not quite the right shape to make them really nice and comfortable. And as I've mentioned already, I am at a bit of a stretch, but so far so good. We haven't hit any dual carriageway yet. We've just been on some nice twisty A and B roads. We're now back in England and we've got 140 miles to go. So I shall continue my journey, and with a bit of luck we'll get on some dual carriageway, because when you want to cruise in this car there are a couple of things to talk about, sadly. But it's not all bad, don't worry. It's not all bad, there's plenty of good things as well. Alright, here we go. Some motorway, joining the M5. So, this car actually cruises alright. I mentioned about the 5-speed box. One of my worries with the 5-speed box was that it wouldn't be tall enough gear, but actually it's not that bad. Cruising at 70 miles an hour, it's doing less than 3,000 RPM. The difference with having 6 speeds would be that you'll have closer ratios between them. You just have a less of a jump between each gear. And I think just for the more spirited driving on a B road, I think that might well just be a benefit. A couple of things to mention. This particular spec of car does not have cruise control, and it's been quite a long time since I've driven a car that doesn't have cruise control. And actually it's not great, because of the driving position, my foot on the throttle, my kind of foot's back, and it puts a bit of strain on the front of my ankle. And what you tend to find when you're on a long cruise and you're just sat here at a constant speed and your foot's not moving, you start to get cramp and an ache in your foot. You don't get it on a B road so much because your right foot's moving between the throttle and the brake, and it's just easier and you get a bit of movement. But when you're on a long dual carriageway, it doesn't move at all. And if you've got the ability to put cruise control on, you can move your foot around. I'll often kind of move my foot back a little bit from the pedals, stretch it out a bit, because you're not actually needing it to be continuously pressed on the throttle. So for me, lack of cruise control in this car is a really big challenge for making the car comfortable for a longer journey, because it really makes it so it's not comfortable at all. Certainly on the drive up, I had a stretch of dual carriageway that was, an hour and a half to 2 hours really without a break, and my foot was actually quite painful by the time I got out of the car, coupled with quite a numb bum, and it became quite an unpleasant experience. Now, I'm sure for many people that's probably not going to be something that bothers them that much. This is the kind of car that you would probably drive as a run around at the weekend, or short blast run to work. You probably wouldn't be doing that many long miles in it. It's not really you could daily this car, of course, but you probably wouldn't buy this size of car if you were going to do long journeys. Interestingly, if you compare it to both of my Minis, even my Mini Roadster, although it's got coilovers so the suspension's quite firm, that cruises on a motorway brilliantly. And actually it's a really super comfy place to do long miles in it, far more so than this car. But it sits here quite nicely. I'm doing 70 now, and as I said, I'm doing just under 3,000 RPM, and it's all right. It doesn't, the steering's nice, and in this sport mode it's quite firm, so know, it doesn't give you a great amount of feedback. It just keeps you in a straight line, and you can dispatch some miles. But yeah. Cruise control, come on. I mean, seriously? When was the last time you drove a car, a modern day car, that didn't have cruise control? Bloody key. Oh, there you go. Do you know what? The petrol filler cap has got a lock on it with a key. I haven't seen one of those for ages, and it's really, really annoying.
And settle into the driver.
Shut up. It's probably easier if you're doing it with two hands, but trying to film it doing it one hand is next to impossible. Anyway, let me just connect my phone, because you got to do that. So that was about 33 litres from empty. Hopefully, just do that. Let's get all this connection working. Yes, look at that, it's working again. So 33 litres from empty. Interestingly, I'm always quite, when cars you don't know when the fuel warning light comes on. So the fuel warning light came on, and it indicated I still had about 40 miles of range left. And I drove like that for quite a while, keeping an eye on it. You haven't got a range indicator when you're in sport mode. Talking about sport mode, let me put it in that again. There we go. So you have to put it back down into normal mode to see what the range is, and then you're driving like that, and it was saying 35 miles, and then suddenly it came up with a low fuel warning, and it said I had no range left whatsoever. So it kind of goes from you're okay, you've got about 25 miles, to suddenly nothing at all. And I'm pretty sure there's plenty of fuel in there, and you could keep going for a while, but then you just start to get that range anxiety thing. So I've got about 53 miles to go, just over an hour left. It was a good job I stopped, because I had a very numb bum, a pretty dead right leg, and I was really desperate for a wee. But back on it now. Now, let me just talk about fuel economy. Because I have been driving this car relatively hard. In the time I've had it, let me have a look at the trip information on here. So I've done about 730 miles in the time I've had it. Average speed of 38 miles an hour. Just join the carriageway safely. My average fuel consumption is 39.8 miles to the gallon. I think that's pretty good, to be honest, because a fair bit of that has been B-road, where I've been giving it a bit of Yahoo. And obviously it's not going to be so efficient, but that's what I find with my Mini, is all these smaller cars, when you're on a cruise, they're actually pretty good on fuel. And on a longer journey, that's important. Now, in terms of actual range, let me just check. So I am brimmed to the top, and my range is about 300 miles. It's actually showing 310 miles. So 310 miles, that just cost me about £47 to fill up from fumes at a very expensive. I think I just paid £1.40 something for fuel, which was like, oh, bloody horrible. Might have been £1.50 actually. Anyway, so I'm going to crack on. So fuel economy, pretty good. The last couple of things we need to talk about, we'll do nearer to my destination. Well, after over 4 hours of driving, I am very, very nearly home. Regular viewers will probably recognise where I am. In fact, you'll probably recognise the bit of road I'm about to go up. And what a fitting end to this road test of this little 595 Scorpioneoro thing. So, here we go, up the Petrol hill climb. That was up in third. It's got a fair amount of pull from third. And I think with these corners, you probably second would be a bit low. It's got nice front end grip. The steering is quite heavy and quite dull in some respects. It's not as lively, certainly not as lively as my Roadster, but it's got plenty of grip, that's for sure. And for me, this kind of road is where this car absolutely comes alive. It's just ace. So, what are my final impressions of the little 595 Scorpioneoro? Well, overall, for a B-road blaster, it's an absolute hoot. I love it to bits. That little bit of road back there is such a great example of when this car comes to the fore and shows its true colours. It's brilliant at it. It will put a huge smile on your face. You won't be going that fast, so you don't have to worry about your licence so much, but you'll just be having a really, really good time. The downside for me as quite a tall driver, I am 6'3", is this car is just not the right shape for me. Ergonomically, it's not for a long journey. I've been in this car for 4 hours and I feel like it. I've got an achy bum, an achy back. My right throttle foot is quite sore because of the lack of cruise control, and it's just not a comfortable place for me to do a long journey, and therefore it would never be a kind of, if you like, a full-on daily proposition for me. I have been surprised by how much space is in it, but I don't want to put a downer on this car because I think it looks mega with the gold wheels and the gold trim. I'd like the grille at the front to have the Abarth writing in gold because I think that would look really cool. And I think, see, I've just gone to go for sick there. But I think for the money, just over 22,000 quid, it's a really, really good proposition, especially with it being limited numbers. However, one of the things I get frustrated a little bit with these little 595s and 695s Abarths because they bring out special editions and you think, finally there's going to be a fast one, and they're all limited to, they're all at that kind of 160, 170 horsepower. There's the Bosto, which is a bit faster, but you're just waiting for one to come out that's got more than 200 horsepower. You can tune these cars to quite a lot north of 200 horsepower, and it's such a shame. And I know this one's probably not aimed at that, but and I get the feeling it's kind of the end of the run. They're running out of imagination as to what to do next. They bring out limited editions. They look cool. The 70th Anniversario looked amazing. This looks great, but underneath the skin, it's the same as all of the other ones. The Essa with the slightly better suspension and stuff, that has probably a better feel, and it's got the uprated exhaust as well, but they are all very, very similar. And that's not a bad thing because it's a good recipe, but it's disappointing because you think it could be so much more. For me, I'll stick to my Mini, but I have enjoyed my time with this. I hope you enjoyed the slightly different format of the review. I had such a tight schedule this week, I thought, you know, I'm going to do something just a little bit different. I'm going to document my journey, 230 odd miles, 4.5 hours in the car. I've enjoyed it. I'm a bit stiff, but oh well, you never know. But I hope you really enjoyed it. Massive thanks to Abarth UK for letting me have the car for this week. It's been so interesting finally doing some miles in one of these, having had, see, this is the kind of corner, look, tuck it in, boom. That's what they're brilliant at. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol for plenty more content to come, and I'll see you on the next film, guys. But you take care, drive safe.